Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to video game news. Today is Monday, December 1st, also known as Cyber Monday. Although, if this is any indication of a trend, today's Cyber Monday sales and frankly Black Friday sales, which they tried to expand into a week of really bad sales, particularly on Amazon.com, which led the trend, but then was followed, I think, by most other stores. Although, in fairness, to other stores, they've always had kind of crappy sales and never really embraced Black Friday. Walmart pretended in the past to really embrace Black Friday by having doorbuster sales that were often TVs of much lower quality, specially made for Walmart in the past. So you get like a $200 TV, but it was really designed to fail in a year to bring you back and buy a new TV the next year, which, yes, I'd be very careful about, particularly electronics, but I imagine lots of things at Walmart just having a lower quality build compared to something that looks exactly the same at a different store. Although, who knows, maybe they've gotten into that same business of making lower quality builds for different stores, and that's part of the reason also why everything has different model numbers and it's impossible to compare. Beds and mattresses are notorious for that. But yeah, there's, for what interests me and what I think would interest most people, not very many good sales at all have happened, and the discounts on things that are on sale feel minimal at best. Definitely things on Amazon that are just straight up lying about being on sale when compared to, if not the exact same product, similar products that say they aren't on sale and are cheaper. But yeah, I don't think the economy is in a particularly good shape, and the fact that economy reports and jobs reports are not being released by the U.S. presidency at the time, there is only the assumption that that is true can really be taken, because you don't hide good news, you only hide bad news. So I've managed so far to actually not spend any money, really. I found a Slick Deals game for like $1.37, and that's all I bought on Black Friday. Really, is $1.30, when typically in previous years I would have spent hundreds of dollars. Now, in fairness, I do have a bunch of stuff that I was going to buy anyways, and it's barely discounted, if discounted at all. So I do have in my cart probably about $500 worth of stuff, 100 of which is just the medical device of a seat cushion for my chair, which I desperately need. 60 of it is Lego, which I desperately don't need. I actually found out I bought the exact same 2-in-1 Lego Christmas tree set twice. Must have been two different Slick Deals popping up again. It's not really a problem though, because I can then use the 2-in-1 set twice to build it in the two different ways it can be built. You can build one big Christmas tree, or you can build two medium-sized Christmas trees. And so, since I have this Lego Christmas Village, that I don't really know why I have it, or why I'm doing Lego in the first place, that would still work pretty nicely. I could also certainly give one away. That would work too. Then there is in my cart a Lego 18-wheeler truck that would look nice in the Lego City / Christmas Village. You just naturally end up having a Lego City if you do the big modular building sets, and that's what I started with and enjoyed, although that wasn't really the first set. The first set I did was a Millennium Falcon Star Wars thing, and I was doing more models to go on bookshelves. But yeah, $60. It says it's a 30% discount. By the way, we're scrolling down the SteamDB 24-hour peak concurrent chart right now. Is about what I'm about as good of a deal as you can get for Lego. If you can get Lego on sale at all, it's as good a deal as you really can get if it's official Lego. Then I have like sheets, towels, really boring stuff. There's a sink protector slash grid of rubber that I'm gonna stick in my mailbox so my mail doesn't lie in water when it rains and soak up the water. Some more far-sighted glasses. Yeah, really boring stuff. There's in a smart vent register. It's really for floor vent registers and ceiling registers, but I'm gonna get one of those while it's on sale and while you have this extended return window of the whole Christmas season, just to see if I can get it to fit. Like, the sizings on vent registers are a nightmare, particularly in my house where it's not even consistent from room to room. But you have to basically take off the vent register cover and measure the inside, because the vent register cover won't inherently tell you the right sizes of how it's measured. Yeah. And there's several standards, which is to say there are no standards on the inside sizes. Particularly, I think, in the United States compared to other countries, where I bet they do fall into more consistency with having more floor registers. And what's the whole point of making it smart? Well, the bad part is you add a plug to it, which is a ridiculous thing of running a cord across your ceiling and down the wall, or running a cord through the attic, which might be a little less ridiculous. But my hope here is that it would assist the flow of air by creating potentially negative pressure at the end of a vent, so that air from the fan inside your inside HVAC unit flows even better. That's my hope. The fear would be certainly that breaks something on the extremely complicated calculations of airflow rates that theoretically were done when your vents were installed, but more realistically were never done in the first place, and they simply threw a bunch of vents together that they had in the back of the truck. But yeah, there's, I suspect, a small percentage of HVAC technicians who actually care about airflow and actually like do the testing, and then there's a bunch of handymen that get hired to assemble these things that just are getting paid by the hour and are going to rush through it. Plus, I imagine the complicated math is something that gets just done wrong, particularly in the United States, where they will oversize the air conditioner units and blow really cold air. Like, yeah, and it might certainly be stupid to even do smart vents, even as an experiment, which this is almost 100% an experiment thought, because the smarter move would be to get a heat pump unit and replace the whole unit and have it just constantly running, which that's how heat pump units do, is that they just are constantly running and they are just constantly keeping the temperature to what you want it to do. It is not the off and on system that a traditional air conditioner unit has. So I, at this point, would normally say that's what I've been doing is shopping Black Friday, but really haven't. I've been playing Balertro and spending a ton more time working on all these little side projects to adjust everything to run on Violent Monkey scripts and not rely on two other extensions in Firefox, a JavaScript injection extension and a CSS extension. Yeah, here's the JavaScript, here's the CSS. I'm trying to get rid of those, and I am trying to get rid of uBlock Origin from being enabled on a lot of these. There is a question whether I need uBlock Origin installed at all. I think the goal is to potentially disable it and then re-enable it when necessary to use it. It still has a useful ability in that you can find an element and zap it quickly, whereas you can't do that with Violent Monkey. Or you could use the picker ability to find an element and preview and create it. But then at that point, you would really want to just copy this information and maybe have to convert some of this information into a Violent Monkey script instead of just clicking the create button. I imagine people over the weekend have been playing a little bit of video games. I don't imagine it's anything particularly too different from what people would normally be playing. Although it is interesting to see like Hearts of Iron so high up. Yeah, I am still working on turning the entire UI Vision plugin that opens my news stories into Violent Monkey scripts, and some of the code is going to get dropped. Like, for instance, when I run these macros, I scan and save all of this information into a array, and then I open up a Google form that takes that information and pastes it in to put it into a chart, which I have done nothing with that chart at all. So it doesn't feel like it's worthwhile to continue to do that. Although, in fairness, I think I could probably scan all this information and save it as a CSS file just for future use, and then have a whole bunch of CSS files that you'd have to import. Not CSS, CSV, comma, separated value files. Jargon too close to each other. But yeah, I don't feel like this information has proven to be particularly useful after spending a lot of time creating that code. I've spent far too much time this year creating code and redoing code. But yeah, it really did not pay off at the end of the year, where had it really paid off at the end of the year, I would have been able to say, here's the most played games at the end of the year, not the most talked about, the most hyped new games. Here's the most wishlisted games, which really, if you're going to do any kind of event in December, that is probably the more interesting event to do. Is to say, here's what is most wishlisted, here's what people are most excited about, here's where we would try and pull up trailers as far as most wishlisted games of the year that also aren't going to come out before the end of the year, which I doubt anything is going to come out before the end of the year. But yeah. There is definitely room to make some content around the most wishlisted games. Of course, the most wishlisted also includes the hardware of the Steam machine and the Steam frame. Yeah, doesn't really tell you too much. I've also really failed. I don't want to drop this day in history scrolling here, but it is very much something I'm scrolling down with no commentary. Very often I'm not even paying attention to it. And yeah, it is something that is interesting and yet not interesting to me personally. It's relevant, but I guess not interesting to me personally. So yeah, I've been playing more Belartro, making a couple more episodes, playing the regular runs. There is a lowest stake that are white stake difficulties for the regular runs, and then there are a red stake above that, and so I've gotten a victory on the red stake, which unlocked one extra deck. But then I am going to have to figure out a way to unlock the next stake, and then the stake above that, then the stake above that, then the stake above that. Which it does just feel like Belartro is going to fall into this realm of extremely, extremely difficult grinding. I've unlocked almost everything as far as the Jokers, and unless there was some big twist where the Jokers started to get better, that their metrics started to level up, I feel like it's going to weirdly revert from being a roguelite L-I-G-H-T into a roguelike L-I-K-E. I think it may even actually describe itself as a roguelike, which is not really accurate. But yeah, once you've unlocked all the Jokers, once you've unlocked every single thing that can pop up, every run after that point seems like it's going to be just randomly generated after that point in that experience. Which is definitely opening up the door for some real grindiness. Just extremely, extremely grindiness. The challenges still really suck in Belartro in that they don't give you any reward for doing them other than moving the percentage of completion up, and they aren't particularly that interesting of gimmicks. They're often fairly similar to each other, and they're all really still designed to make it more of a struggle, whereas I would have liked to see most, if not at least half, of the challenges be super easy. You start with a 3-card combination of Jokers that synergize so incredibly well that you're almost guaranteed a victory. It definitely has the feeling that the developer of Belartro was really, really good at his game when he was developing things like challenges. And thus, he is holding the challenges to a much higher standard than he probably should. But yeah, there's definitely a issue there where it's not quite as good as Binding of Isaac. Where in Binding of Isaac, after you get a certain number of victories, after you accomplish certain things, you upgrade your starting point on a character. And having the D6 as Isaac as a character that lets you re-roll items and re-roll for good items that you're familiar with versus bad items that you may not be as familiar with changes the flow, and you go from a struggle to beat level 5 of Binding of Isaac. I think it's level 5, the first big boss, Mom. There's a struggle to just beat Mom, and then the game ends after you beat Mom at the very beginning, for it then to unlock way more content, for it to continue to unlock way more content. There is stuff in the Binding of Isaac in its latest expansions that I question whether I would ever be good enough to see, as it just continues to unlock more content with more difficulty as people who have been playing the game for years, possibly non-stop, get better and better at it. Yeah. Which I guess that's an interesting thought, as how Binding of Isaac as a video game has just created generational improvement on how it is played. Whereas, yeah, you see that maybe in some sports games, like football of decades past or baseball decades past would have been played very differently. And one assumes that a modern football player or a modern baseball player is a much better player than some of the even greats of the past. But yeah, also the rules have changed on those kinds of sports quite a bit. In contrast, I don't know if a World of Warcraft player today is much better than a World of Warcraft player of its first years. Tends to be the case that things stay the same and there is just not an increase in skill. And a big part of that, I guess, is probably because World of Warcraft is really not that skill based as much as it is strategy based, and that you don't have to be better at actually moving, you just have to be better at hitting keys in the right order at a reasonable speed, which is done often with just macros anyways. So yeah, don't know if I have too much more to say about Balertro. It is a series that I'm going to have to wrap up, and then when I wrap it up, I'm probably only going to be about 50% completed with the amount of progress that could be unlocked in the game. And then I'll have it in my back pocket to play Balertro on my Steam Deck if nothing else is going on. It tends never really to be the case that nothing else is going on, though. So it at least gives me one game to play on my Steam Deck, but more than likely I won't be grinding out an entire hour. Certainly might save me from watching Sudoku on YouTube. But that is, I think, just about all it might save me from as far as things go. And I forgot I was going to keep these tabs for use while I'm still trying to program things. Like these tabs in particular are how I open my news stories. So they are what I'm trying to use to get away from using the UI Vision tabs. I still have a lot of programming that needs to be done. I spend a lot of my time programming over the weekend, trying to set up Google authorization OAuth setups to use rclone as my own personal client so it would sync faster, only to be rejected effectively by Google's upgraded security procedures, which would require verification. So yeah, and the OAuth token that's built into rclone is really what you should just use, even though it is going to be really slow, because trying to get verified requires you to have a video showing how your client, your program is going to work, and a website, a support page, a licensing page. kinds of things you would have to do if you were really making a program instead of just trying to get a specific token for personal use. And I've been through that process before recently, and it's not the verification process, but just setting up an OAuth token, and it's scary and complicated and way overly secured. I think intentionally, just to weed out anyone who isn't really serious about it. So I went down a dead end in that, but I did get rclone to work, and so with that I have figured out a way to back up my settings from my personal old computer for its water backup to Google Cloud, and then back up my router settings to Google Cloud, which, yeah, hopefully that'll create a situation where I don't lose my router settings again. The network I have right now doesn't seem to be really wanting to work with KDE Connect on my computer, and I've run into that problem before, and now that I look at it, it says 2 devices are connected. And when I hover over it, yeah. So, yeah, it's probably just running badly on my computer. But typically, these things do. Yeah, now it works. I just needed to actually close the system tray icon. I'm still playing Pokemon TCG Pocket right now. We're in a downtime, new month refresh of things you can buy in the shops, but no events really going on right now. Still playing Magica Modica a little bit, although I had hoped that there would have been a chance to just get away from it over this weekend in particular and just finally break myself free of playing the game. And then I'm still playing Memento Mori, which is also in downtime. But yeah, it's all going to be in downtime right now. It's like Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, all of these made up holidays are, well, I guess all holidays are technically made up, but they're big time sucks, and so people playing mobile games is obviously going to be less likely. The 18th is the winter sale for Steam as far as buying games, which I don't think I'm going to buy games. One thing I can say is that I was actively holding off on buying some things because I was waiting to see if the sales got better, and a couple of things, the sales got worse and the sale went away on Black Friday. In particular, I was going to get a new front door lock that had a Face ID and a deep vein scan that looked like it was on sale. And that sale went away, so I took that off, which is fine. It's more is the better, really. My front door lock sucks because it's not integrated with the rest of my interface, but it works at the moment, so there's not a good reason to change it. And I was going to do interior door handles, which there is a definite argument to upgrade those, but they weren't really on sale when I did the research, so do that a different time. The fear, which I will fully admit was the exact same fear I had last Black Friday, is that prices were going to go up. And for the most part, prices did slowly creep up by pennies and dollars here and there, enough that people tend not to notice. But what mostly happened this year is sales just went down. Less discounts, or fewer sales in general. I guess we're going to get the November survey, hardware survey, which I wouldn't expect there to be any major changes as far as the hardware survey in November. There is a decent chance that by the time we get the December hardware survey in January, you might see a decent number of changes. The only thing that would really shift it, and that might shift the numbers a little bit, is just a bunch of people buying computers for Windows 11 compatibility reasons, or because they got upgraded and forced into Windows 11 and found their computer just was not performant enough to actually run the Windows 11. Here's one I'm going to abandon, and this is where scraping all the data on the SteamDB gets turned into a chart. But yeah, over the course of this year, this went from being 52 weeks down to 26 weeks, as in a rolling 6-month element of showing us what people in the top 10 or so categories, top 10 charts, were playing, which doesn't really tell us much. I mean, the basic stuff that, yes, there's always a ton of either humans or bots playing Counter-Strike 2 and Dota, maybe PUBG also, but probably a ton of bots playing Bongo Cat and Banana, a ton of people that probably set up bots and then just left them running. Stardew Valley, I guess, is somewhat unique. Marvel Rivals being this high is surprising. Baldur's Gate 3 was a big thing, but is it really a big thing now? It's just not a very interesting conversation in my mind. Just to say, yes, these numbers are huge, but are these really what gamers are interested in talking about? Call of Duty versus Battlefield 6 is about the best conversation I think I could even have amongst this chart. So there's just this air of irrelevancy that I feel like exists here around the concept of what people are playing the most, or bots are playing the most, versus what people are hyped about and talking about as far as video games. And it is perhaps a sad statement to say about the industry, but it definitely does feel like there is more interest in discussing what people are hyped about and talking about than there is discussing what people are actually playing. That a lot of the community of quote-unquote gamers are actually people who are watching other streamers play video games, or just discussing video games, but actually have very little time to actually play games themselves. Yeah, but if we were to start to exclude that group of people, the community of gamers who are truly playing games would be much smaller. So yeah, it says I'm up to 136 hours on Belartro. As far as my recording goes, I'm probably closer to 42 hours. And I have 16 of 31 achievements. Getting a red stake difficulty win has been done by 45% of the players, so I really haven't made any great achievements there either. And yeah, as I'm removing uBlock origins, add filters, this one is back, and this is back. And ideally, I would prefer this page to look like that instead, including that. One of the things about the Violent Monkey CSS as it's being injected is that a lot of things I had before as far as CSS is either not working and needs an important tag to make sure it works, or is not really getting to the heart of the matter, and there is a better, higher tag in which you could add the CSS to apply to more things. And that gets into a lot of fiddliness when you start to mess with the CSS and try and figure it out. Again, finding the picker and using the picker may not even be the best way to do it, when actually the inspect screen here is probably a better way to do this. Then you can find spots and highlight things in the HTML tag, HTML code, to find a div more than likely it's going to be a div tag to highlight something. Let me show you what I'm doing here. As you go down the HTML tags in the inspector on one screen, it will, oh, I'm not showing you, am I? Let me move the window a little bit. So yeah, as you go down the HTML tags on one screen, it starts to let you select specific things and figure out how that's going to work. Now, I did run into an issue of finding things by CSS class in JavaScript, which made it more difficult to do some different JavaScript manipulation. But I figured it out over the weekend, jumping around quite a bit in different projects. A lot of these projects also just redoing things to be more optimized. Boy, do I wish somebody was paying me to do all of this stuff. Although, in fairness, if someone was paying me, I would also be held to some kind of standards of quality and efficiency. And in that, I'm not sure I'd want that. I may not be logged in from the looks of it. I'm not sure. Should have that I already own that. But it's not doing that on this group. Maybe it just never does it on that group. I don't know. You can see, still have tons of stuff on my wish list. Although having tons of stuff on my wish list doesn't really mean that when the winter sale happens on the 18th that I'm actually going to want to buy any games. Yeah. One of the things I thought I was going to do on the Black Friday sales was set up a very complicated gray water system, and I've decided to put all of that off. One, because it would have been a really expensive project, and two, because a big part of doing that was going to be about getting my water usage down for December, January, and February to lower my sewer usage calculation, and I just wasn't going to get the project done in time. In fact, I wasn't even aware so much that Cyber Monday is actually December 1st. So yeah, I'm now instead doing an experiment of pretending like I'm living on Mars or something with extreme water restrictions, because I had a ton of baby wipes and plastic plates and cups and silverware, and so I'm just using that to severely reduce water, not washing my hands in the sink. I had some spare distilled water that I'm washing off my toothbrush with. I'm still flushing toilets and using bidets, so plenty of water usage there, and I still will bathe normally. But yeah, as far as shaving, washing hands, brushing teeth, and reducing dishes and reducing laundry as much as possible. A big part of that will just be trying to I'm not really going to reduce laundry really much at all. I'm just going to try and maybe have smaller loads or bigger loads, more packed loads. I don't know. But yeah, it's a silly thing that only makes sense because I already had paper plates and paper cups and wanted to get rid of all of those things and diaper wipes, and I just wanted to get rid of all of those things anyway, so this is recouping money that was invested previously. Torchlight Infinite? It doesn't look like the other Torchlight series at all. I know they made a Torchlight 3 that was really terrible. But yeah, they're... Yeah, this is from, I think, the same series, but you can see it's very mixed. And it's just weird. Because the characters, I just don't feel like ever really looked like this before. Had a completely different company make this. The game still looks a little bit like Torchlight, but looks enough like Torchlight. But yeah, they really screwed up on that Torchlight series. Even Torchlight 2, though, was kind of a hassle. But yeah, anime girl with big frilly appearance is definitely not what Torchlight was about. Torchlight was more of a... It was a fantasy, more Tolkien-esque fantasy game. And where's the pet? And the guns being a thing. Yeah, I have wondered if maybe this isn't part of the Torchlight series and this is just a name confusion game. Yeah, this may just be a name confusion game. This is what Torchlight looked more like, but then even this, the robots feel different. They were golem-like robots. But yeah, really crazy different looking game as far as Torchlight, if this is part of the Torchlight series. I don't know why I'm talking about this even. And this is playing at a really terrible frame rate. I definitely feel like Steam, with their new video backends, is not working as well as it should. This might be a case of it needing to be at like 720p, which in fairness that wouldn't be a terrible thought. Can we turn this down to 720p? Even at 720p, if we were to watch the videos here, I mean, that's going to be more than enough quality. Yeah. I'm weirdly confused as to whether this is supposed to be the part of the Torchlight series or not. What the Torchlight series I'm thinking about. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, I suspect you just have to assume that Torchlight Infinite is not really in any way connected to the previous Torchlight games. And you just have to assume that there are multiple games that are called Torchlight, as that's probably a name you can't copyright. So yeah, the Steam Award nominations have happened. Yeah, they're saying during the winter sale. The winter sale hasn't started yet. The Black Friday sale. So they're kind of prematurely doing this. We get a bunch of stickers, which I don't think you would do anything. Oh, I guess we have the Steam Awards already out. Well, I wasn't aware of this, and I guess this is our bit of breaking news. So we go from me rambling about Torchlight Infinite and being confused about that to the Steam Awards. So let's try and make a clean break. Here are your 2024 Steam Awards, presenting the winners. Because I voted on it, I unlocked a bunch of stickers of pointlessness. And the winner of the Game of the Year award, which probably should be at the bottom, is Black Myth Wukong. One that I didn't really think about, and certainly none of the games that I nominated I think will make it into the top tier list here. Runner-ups as far as finalists are Stalker 2, Helldivers 2, Space Marine 40K or Space Marine 2 I believe, Belotro, and Black Myth Wukong was the winner. Your VR Game of the Year award goes to Metro Awakening, with your runner-ups being Blade and Sorcery, Davy Go, Help Wanted, Five Nights at Freddy's, Help Wanted 2, and Maestro. I don't recognize most of these games, and even if I do recognize them, I wouldn't have really known that they were VR. VR seems like this year is going to be relevant. Maybe with the Steam Frame coming out, the VR play field will expand quite a bit. Maybe, but not likely. The Labor of Love award is given to Elden Ring, with your runner-ups being... It's funny how they're hiding the runner-ups and not hiding the winner. Dota 2, Stardew Valley, Baldur's Gate 3, I believe. Elden Ring was the winner, and No Man's Sky, which all of these are older games, with Baldur's Gate 3 being, I think, the only one that's maybe came out in 2025. But I'm not even certain about that. These are all very big games with a lot of effort put into them, with the exception of Stardew Valley, which is a small game with a lot of effort put into them, in its visual scope at least. The best game on the Steam Deck award has been given to God of War Ragnarok, which probably is an example of how the most popular, most recognizable games are going to win, when, in my thought, take it with a grain of salt since I'm playing Balertro right now. I think Balertro is a much better game for the form factor of a handheld than a port of a console game is. The runner-ups were Hades 2, Rogue Trader, I think there's probably something more to that name, Deep Rock Galactic Survivor, and Balertro. Yep, you can see, I could see where Hades 2, even though it's still in early access, also would justifiably be a better candidate in my mind to be the best game on the Steam Deck. I just don't think this game in particular is best enjoyed on a Steam Deck compared to a gaming PC, where Balertro is not going to give you much of a different experience. Although, to be fair, audio does sometimes drag and not play well on the Steam Deck, so there might be some performance issue there for Balertro in particular that held it back. But yeah. The Better with Friends award is given to Helldivers 2. The runner-ups would have been Palworld, Helldivers 2, Space Marine, Satisfactory, and Sons of the Forest. Now, why is it that one of these is lit up in color and the rest of these aren't? When I click on something here, it's just going to take me to the page of it. So I kind of have to assume that the lit up thing is the runner-up, is the actual runner-up, and they're just not really explaining that well. So winner would have been like Myth Wukong, runner-up would have been Helldivers 2. And see, this is a great point to point out where I really feel like these Game of the Year awards should probably just give awards to everybody. It really wouldn't hurt them to say all 5 of these games were Game of the Year. They're all fairly different games. It gives a nice highlight of very popular games. And then these could have been same thing, just 5 equal winners. One does not need to win by popularity over the others. In this case, if colored in does mean it is the runner-up, then Balertro made it to second place. As far as the Outstanding Visual Style Award, do you really need the stickers to be popped up like this too? It's like, can't get them to go away. The winner was Silent Hill 2, with the runner-up being Metaphor ReFantasio, I believe, which is a great example of just how drastically different animation styles and visual styles can be, and how there really should be at least a couple of different categories or multiple winners in a category like this. You have what was originally a Japanese game using 3D CGI hyper-realistic graphics of the time being remade into modern 3D super realistic 3D graphics in Silent Hill 2. And then you have a more inspired by 2D anime style, but still 3D CGI anime style, visual style, Metaphor ReFantasio, which contrasts drastically from Hades, which would be more of a 2D animated but not anime style, just doesn't have that same bright color palette and has more of a darker tonality and color palette to it. And then Nine Souls is a bit more colorful, but perhaps a little bit more comic booky. And then I don't even know what the name of this one is. It's being silhouetted this way. Neva, N-E-V-A. I mean, I can just barely make out the contrast there. It looks like it probably is more of a unique art style too. And so yeah, again, a great example of things that should all be considered equal winners, because you really are comparing apples to oranges in that case. And one of the great things about video games compared to TV or movies is that there's just a much higher possibility to have wildly different animation styles, like a anthropomorphic dog holding a gun, for example, whereas doing that in movies cost a lot in CGI budget, or doing it in TV costs the same amount and will be done on a lower budget because TV budgets will be lower. Yeah. So, moving on, the most innovative gameplay award is given to Liar's Bar, with Satisfactory getting the runner-up, which I question that. Now, I can't really argue that Balatro should have won here. It is interesting to see how very well played, very popular games are showing up in multiple categories, like Helldivers 2 also. But yeah, I wouldn't say that there is that much innovation in Balatro. It is just poker with some wild and crazy modifiers, but the wild and crazy modifiers aren't even that innovative. I'm not even sure what Liar's Bar is as a game. Stalker 2, I would think, would be fairly generic gameplay, and Helldivers 2, I think, would be fairly generic gameplay. I feel like you could definitely find things that would have more innovative gameplay, but unfortunately all award shows are popularity contests, and this one is a pure popularity contest, which really doesn't even have to be as much popularity as just recognizability for somebody to win on things. I thought the Steam Awards had a nomination period and then asked people to vote on those nominations afterwards, so that it might be more of a ranked choice voting system. Well, not really a ranked choice voting system, but it would bring people together and ask them to vote on things that maybe they didn't nominate for, but I guess it doesn't work that way. It probably would be better if it did work that way. Although inherently all that would mean is that I would have been asked to vote on one of these games for this category, and I would have just then voted for Balatro. Instead, they've just taken the top votes via nominations and made them win. Which, yeah, none of my nominations are going to even show up, I think, in this. So, the Best Game at You Suck At award winner is Black Myth Wukong, with, in this case, Black Myth Wukong being the lit up colored one also. So what does that mean? That it was not only, it was overwhelmingly the biggest pick. Well, your other runner-ups are Ghost of Tsushima, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, Taken 8, and the finals. Best Soundtrack Award was given to Red Dead Redemption, an older game, with runner-ups being Frostpunk 2, Silent Hill 2, Horizon, is that Horizon Forbidden West Complete Edition? I thought it was Horizon Hidden West, but I guess it's Forbidden West. And then the colored in one, which I still am having to assume is the runner-up, is Fate Stay Night. And so here we have one example, I guess, of a Japanese anime game at least making it to the finalist category, but not really winning. That is always a problem, is that these Japanese games are either not really liked globally as much as I think they probably should be, which is probably true, or they are just generally snubbed by Western companies, even Steam, which, yeah, Tokyo Game Show really should have an online site where they just have voting. Now, if I go back here and look at these lit up things, maybe the colored in things are the things I voted for or I nominated. I just don't think so. Though I could see myself saying Helldivers 2. I didn't play Helldivers 2. I've never played it, so it's not that. But for like best VR game, for Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted 2, no. No way I nominated that. So that's not what the colored in means. So, yeah, I have no idea what is going on with the colored in. I thought it was the runners up, but then explain how Black Myth could be the winner and the runner up. Moving on, the Outstanding Story-Rich Game award is Black Myth Wukong. In fairness, I can't really complain too much about an Asian game not getting enough coverage when Black Myth Wukong is seemingly sweeping the board on these awards. And we have Ghost of Tsushima getting nominations. Other runner-ups being Stalker 2, Final Fantasy 16, another Asian game, mouth-washing, not an Asian game as far as I know. And then the Sit Back and Relax award winner was Farming Simulator 25, with Web Fishing being the runner-up, as well as Farming's Tiny Glade, TCG Card Shop Simulator, and House Flipper 2. So then the rest of this is just happening. Now, this is just instructions, but look, it says, when will the winners be announced? All winners will be announced on December 31st, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. So, what are we looking at here? Then. Oh. Okay. Well, this seems like I just wasted a bunch of time. Why would it link to this page in 2025 from the front page? I don't understand this at all. So, these were the winners last year. This is all last year's winners. Interesting. Which definitely speaks to how crappy 2025 has been, in that it's kind of the exact same games. Like, it really does feel like it's the exact same games. But yeah, these were all 2024 winners. So my nominations last year, I don't even know what they would have been. Probably didn't line up with these winners at all. But yeah, that is crazy. I feel like that had to have been unintentional. It's weird to highlight the winners of last year right now. Yeah, and I just typed in Steam Awards 2025 in the URL, and it brought me to 2024 as a redirect. And I just tried Steam Awards in particular, and it took me to 2024. I see what's going on here. Let's go back to the front page. One hand is not talking to the other. And so while the Steam Awards URL, they've seemingly taken it down already. the Steam Awards URL for a brief time there would have taken you to the nominations for 2025. They've taken down the 2025 nominations and had the default redirect take you to the 2024. So I guess in 30 days we'll turn around and we'll deal with the winners of the 2025 Game Awards. Apologies for wasting everybody's time there and being stupid. Had I just been paying attention and read 2024, I should have caught that immediately. So I guess that was a nice blast from the past just to show who won last year, which, yeah, it definitely explains why like God of War Ragnarok would have won last year, as maybe Bellertro wasn't being played as much last year and God of War Ragnarok may have been too new. It generally is the case that anything that came out recently has a higher chance of winning these awards. It would probably be better to have a parallel awards, particularly on Steam, based on reviews, because the most positive reviews would highlight something much more interesting. I doubt we have any refurbed Steam Decks, and I doubt we're going to see any more refurbed Steam Decks for even the winter sale on the 18th, which I keep mentioning today just so people know. But yeah, it's also kind of pointless to buy a 256 refurbed LCD when you can get the regular LCD on sale, non-refurbed, for the same price at the moment. That will be the last opportunity, I think, to get the LCDs. However, as I suspect they will take them off. Interesting, the sale is gone. Well, then I guess there is an argument to getting refurbed if you can get refurbed. But I thought the sale was going to stay until the 18th, but apparently it was only till the 1st. There's still a decent argument to getting the OLED. I really don't think I would pay another $100 for 512 gigabytes of extra space. But it's not really that big of a difference. Having seen all the Black Friday sales, like 512 gigabyte micro SD card is probably about $100. So it's not like you're really getting ripped off there. There's also an estimate that the Steam machine will be around $700, not what I was about to say there, which would put it $50 more expensive than this model. And I mean, honestly, the Steam machine has to start at $700, one would think. Otherwise, it's just going to be a weird argument to make to say you could get a Steam machine for the same price as a Steam Deck. Like, screens and buttons aren't that expensive. But yeah, I guess I'm narrowing my window as far as my guess between $700 and $999 as far as the price of the Steam machine in its barest of forms, unless it comes out with a bare bones machine, which I could see you getting a bare bones machine down to $500, $550. Bare bones meaning it has no RAM in it, which then you'd spend $100 extra to put RAM into it at minimum, and no hard drive in it, meaning you'd spend another $100 plus putting hard drives in it. Then you have to go through the effort of installing some kind of install media on that hard drive to set things up, and yeah, then you would also have to buy a controller on a bare bones machine too, which would be another $70. So if you can take $270, maybe just roughly $300 worth of stuff out of the value of a $700 machine, then yes, you could get it down to $400 in a bare bones form factor, which really wouldn't be a good option for most people unless you already have low profile laptop RAM sitting around. For some reason you have like a broken laptop that also had a NVMe SSD in it, which, I mean, that is probably the most likely scenarios, that you would have had a laptop, the screen broke or something, it's too expensive to replace it, but you can take the RAM out of it, you can take the hard drive out of it and put it into a bare bones Steam machine, which they've not said anything about a bare bones factor, but it would make a lot of sense for them to sell a Steam machine that is a in bare bones form factor. But the guess is going to be that to start with, price more realistically is going to be $700 to $999 as far as how it goes. And yeah, there's really no telling as far as just how enthusiastically Valve wants people to adopt the Steam machines. They, I imagine, on one hand, really want it to be a great success, but they may just define success about as people talking about it more than people actually buying it. I think the number of people talking about the Steam Deck probably severely outweighs the number of people who are actually buying Steam Decks. So I guess this is how you add things to your wish list. So you wish list it as you click these little star buttons. But yeah, there's still a lot of room for speculation on the Steam machine there, and the Steam Deck pricing now is back to me recommending getting a refurb 256 LCD model, first generation model, for cheap, particularly if you're planning on getting a Steam machine later as your main gaming console and you have two people in the house who might want to play different games at the same time, or getting the OLED if you don't mind wasting a little bit of money or spending a little bit more for a better product. I really wouldn't call it wasting. It's worth the upgrade for the battery life and the better screen, but it's more expensive, and if you don't care about the screen and if you don't really care about battery life, battery's life on a gaming handheld's never going to be particularly great until we figure out a whole new battery technology. Plenty of games that people are still playing on Steam. So yeah, there's plenty of that still going around. And see, this was a new project I was going to do, is I was going to take this top played games on the Steam category and make it a sidebar for this thought of vertical streaming, but I still am waiting to see YouTube actually implement vertical streaming. But speaking of YouTube, YouTube emailed me and said that I started my channel 11 years ago, yesterday, I guess. It doesn't seem like that's probably true, but it probably is. I was more than likely trying to distract myself from sales even back then, and so I decided to make a YouTube channel. That is somewhat believable. So yeah, I've been doing this 11 years. For a brief time I was in the YouTube Partner Program before they kicked me out for changing the rules and increasing the requirements by a significant amount. You used to only have to have like 100 subscribers, and watch time wasn't even a consideration there. And then they increased the requirements tenfold and said you needed 1,000 subscribers, which I do have now. Feels like that was 2 years ago that they changed that. But then there is also a requirement of 4,000 watch hours, and I only have about 1,000. So to get back into the YouTube program, to get potentially maybe $100 every 2 or 3 months on ad revenue is my guess. I would need people to be extremely kind and watch all of my old content like crazy to get the watch time up to 4,000 watch hours. And in that, I don't know if I'd even be accepted into the partner program, because I suspect they probably are way more picky about who they really want to be in the partner program, which is really nobody. They want to get people who are going to struggle for a few years and get a bunch of views for free for YouTube, and then give up and then have a new fresh generation of people struggle, so YouTube can keep as much money as possible, which YouTube's goal is not really as much to run ads on videos as it is to get people to just use YouTube to hopefully buy and rent movies, or be drawn through the algorithm to their big winners that they want to see win, like Captain Sparkles is an example of kind of one of those hand-picked persons that YouTube likes to see succeed, although mostly it's not gamers that they want to see succeed as far as content creators anyways. They want to see celebrities succeed, and they went out of their way to try and get like The Rock to become a YouTube celebrity, and that didn't really go anywhere. And definitely they are very focused on shorts and competing against TikTok, and so there's a lot of weirdness there. I think Good Mythical Morning and Rhett and Link are probably a great example of widely picked as a winner amongst YouTube, and that really is a channel that shouldn't be anywhere as successful as it is, in my opinion, for what they're doing. Alright, well, that's going to bring us to the Video Games Chronicle news. And we'll again say I ran this macro earlier in the morning, maybe 5 or 6 in the morning, so you might have missed some news, but unlikely. I don't think December 1st is going to have a lot of news, and Black Friday weekend is definitely not going to have a lot of news. Let's see. Epic details Fortnite Chapter 7's gameplay changes, including a simple build and self-revive. Chapter 7 Pacific Break is available now. You can see Fortnite here is very wild and crazy in its wide variety of things it has here. So I want to play this trailer, not so much to actually show off the Fortnite thing, which I do want to actually show off, but to show off that I think I have solved the suggestions at the end of YouTube videos issue. Which I don't know who that character is, if that's supposed to be somebody recognizable, or if it was supposed to be like the guy from Crackdown. It doesn't really look like the guy from Crackdown. I don't know who that character is either. Don't know who this character is, so I have to assume that these are just a lot of random characters mixed in with celebrities appearances. But yeah, this is what I wanted to show off here. At the end of the screen, I was able, using a Violent Monkey CSS injection script, to stop the suggestions from being seen. So no more embarrassing clickbait ad videos. Instead, it will just look like this. I could probably spend a lot more effort and try and hide the rest of this. It's not really worth it to try and get this to auto hide, because then when I put the mouse over it, I might want to hit the replay button. And yes, it definitely is better quality. 1080p 60 HD looks perfectly fine when streaming from YouTube, so it definitely feels like it's a case that the backend servers that are serving video on trailers on Steam are not as good quality, nor is the window bigger. So I would much rather watch a YouTube video on something like Video Games Chronicle than watching the same trailer on Steam's game page. Speaking of which, part of what I did and spent more time than I would have liked on was to fix Video Games Chronicles CSS a little bit better. So now the articles, when I scroll down, end at the bottom instead of having a whole bunch of extra empty negative space here. There may be some centering issues where this is slightly off set, or this is more block text word wrapped on the left side too, and the top here may be center, but the picture may not be so center. So there's probably room for more improvement, but that is low priority, something not worth doing right now. I would be much better off focusing in on other things. Yeah, over the weekend I didn't just do a bunch of programming. I also am still doing cleaning and decluttering, and I run across some photo albums that are very old and don't have acid-free paper on them, so these photo books I'm going to have myself or someone else, I'll see if I can get someone else to do it for me, take all the photos out of the photo books, as the acid in the paper is potentially damaging the photos. They are laid out in a nice way and all, but it is more than likely the photos are going to get scanned and then put into some long-term storage, vacuum sealed type thing, if it would make the most sense. But yeah, that'll take some extra work. Yeah, speaking of photos, I tried to finish up my what were supposed to be just quick and dirty, done in a couple days, slideshows, and I tried to upload those to my Google Drive, and then I realized that my Pokedex Pokemon, Who's That Pokemon slideshows alone, were taking up more than the amount of gigabytes. I have like 19 gigabytes on my Google Drive, and yeah, I really should have done the math better there. It really should be 19 terabytes, honestly, but yeah, the photos are taking up too much space. And then the wallpapers slideshow turned into a mess where a significant number of them did not get names associated with them, and I'm not going to put any more effort into it. If anybody actually cares, they'll have to make their own curated naming of the files and labeling of the files. The automated process I set up failed twice, and it's not going to do any better a third time. And then the Pokemon slideshow is the naming orientation that I needed to name was wrong, so I'm having to rename files in different folders so then I can use symlinks in Linux on my router to combine several folders into one without duplicating the actual size of the data. But the general idea there is that it would mix and match 3 different folders into one in a way that you would get the Who's That Pokemon silhouette, then you would get the Who's That Pokemon reveal, and then you'd get the Pokedex entry for the same Pokemon in that order when you're playing it on a slideshow using DLNA on the TV. And the PiOS slideshow project that I roughly installed, which seems like it's pretty much an abandoned project as far as PiSlideOS. It does not feel like there's anyone actively really updating or developing it. A modified version of that definitely seems like a project for a future day for me, to set it up to use our clone to take slideshows from Google Drive. It'd be nice if we could take slideshows from Google Photos, but our clone, I tried to use the Google Photos Drive feature on our clone, and the Google security OAuth token again blocked it. So I think their security is just so tight now that you can't actually access photos. It would make a lot more sense to have photos in Google Photos than it would be to have a slideshow in Google Drive. And it's crazy that those are 2 separate softwares anyways, and not just integrated into each other. I would like to get away from Google and use some other thing. It could be AWS, or but it can't be Amazon Photos, which is what I'd really like it to be, because Amazon Photos doesn't have an API and a way to access it at all. Could be Dropbox or some other service, but I wouldn't really trust Dropbox either. Any service that's just particularly trying to sell you more storage and giving you very poor storage, it's not one to really go with. But yeah, the idea of PiSlideOS being able to synchronize to another online storage service has a very, very large appeal, where you could have multiple monitors, TVs on the wall, and then you just upload one photo to that service, and then they all sync and download that one photo without you having to go and unplug a micro SD card or do anything crazier than that. So yeah, that's another project for a future day. Yeah, I'm rambling here on a very weird news story too to be rambling on. I am the opposite of cool. The article here says, quote, "You were so cool. Koei Tecmo exec makes him heartfelt speech at Tomonobu Itagaki's memorial. The Ninja Gaiden designer died at age 58. Yep, that is probably a very nice sentiment to be made. I know funerals, Shinto funerals, Buddhist funerals, and just general memorials in Japan that are secular are fairly different. Asian memorials are fairly different. There is an weirdness here in that you have a photo in a frame, but then look what you have in the background. There's a cell phone, and then on the back of this device here is some stickers. And I'm not sure what this device is. It looks like it might be just some kind of USB charging power state distribution system, but I don't know. And then you have more electronics and more stickers in the background, which I don't know, maybe this is a way to donate money, some kind of kiosk thing, to do like line payments, which is what you would assume if you're going to digitally donate money. Yeah, I have no idea what this whole thing is about. I don't even know, I guess, if this photo is from the memorial or not. Yeah. So I don't know if these are gifts to the family. This image looks a lot more traditional as far as an image of just flowers. Which flowers suck as gifts in any situation, in my opinion. They die, they take maintenance and upkeep before they die. They hurt people who are allergic to them. They're heavy. I did find a real winner for me for a fan of flowers, in that I found these handcrafted ceramic clay flowers on Amazon.com. They're nice and colorful and fictionally colorful. They're pretty heavy themselves, and they don't come with any bases or real greenery as far as ferns and those types of flowers, as far as fake flowers go. But yeah, compared to cheap plastic fake flowers, they look a lot nicer and do have that handcrafted artistic feel to them. So if you do need to buy flowers, it's a thought to find some handcrafted ceramic flowers. I thought they might arrive broken. They didn't. I thought they might arrive and be much smaller or poor quality, and they weren't. And the person I gave them to was happy to receive them. Particularly as a get well soon thing or as a memorial thing, they are great because you don't have to maintain them. Maybe dust them once in a while, and that is that. Yeah. Let's see if we click on these pictures here. It's going to take us to Twitter/X, and it seems like he was maybe in a band and definitely had that rock star look, which a lot of game developers are in bands and have that rock star appeal, whether they actually are rock stars in your book or not, or just wannabes. Yeah, you can see this is a very different looking type of memorial from that. There's a table here with a bunch of games that he worked on. I would suspect the green would indicate Xbox games, which would be weird in Japan. This may just be the same game in several different variants. Then this is probably a samurai sword type shrine thing, and then a lot of liquor being given. Interesting. Just gifting liquor, not a terrible thought. Then this looks like it's a, I think it's called Baccarat board game, and then some flowers. Yeah. So yeah, my thought here is that these are gifts given to the family, but maybe just things being shown off too. This might be specifically designed around him as far as the samurai swords and the board game. If we were to hit play here, it's going to be 2-minute speech given. Now, inevitably, there's a lot of obligations in Japan, so you would be just obliged to go to a memorial or funeral of a above you in the social class, above you in the pecking order boss. So if you're the boss of a company and you die, there is, if it is a public memorial, which it'd probably be a little rude to have a public memorial, it's going to be expected that all employees go. Not that anyone, all employees would give a speech, but probably the boss below the boss that died would be expected to give a speech. And so, yeah, you never know how sincere that is. Although in fairness, it's pointless to even question sincerity at any memorial anywhere in the world, because there's all kinds of obligations. I'm sure there's plenty of kids out there who gave wonderful memorial speeches about their parents who they secretly hated and or just didn't really know anything about, as it is just the thing that people feel obliged to do. And yeah, it's definitely the kind thing at any kind of memorial or funeral to say nice things about people, regardless of how true they are. Just win with the dignity, as it were, because the other person's dead, so that they certainly aren't going to win that scenario or enjoy winning that scenario. And it is interesting how I describe that as winning, but yeah. Never speak ill of the dead is an old saying, and it does make a lot of sense too. There's potentially grandkids and great-grandkids that it doesn't benefit the living any if you get up there and tell them their grandmother or great-grandmother was a terrible monster, or their grandfather or great-grandfather was a terrible drunk and a gambler. You just let the bad stuff die, and you let the legend be created. Yeah. Eventually, kids will probably figure that out and realize that their grandmother, great-grandmother, and everyone in their previous generation were just humans, and often terrible humans at that. And that's just normal for families. Let's see. Moving on, the next Video Games Chronicle article here says, quote, "I'd love to play her again," end quote. Bayonetta actor Haley says she'll return despite online hate storm. Jennifer Hale, probably not Hale, it's probably Hale, says she feels like she was thrown under the bus after replacing the longtime actor who called for a boycott. Which, that is the right response and right statement. She was probably asked about it, and thus she gives a response. She probably shouldn't go out of her way to offer it. But yeah, voice actors are always looking for work if they're doing their job right, so her wanting to play Bayonetta again is not out of the realm of acceptable by any means. It's very professional, acceptable to say that. The bigger problem, I imagine, is that Bayonetta 3, I don't think was received and played by many people, or particularly received well by the few people that did play it. And without the original creator of Bayonetta actually being involved, I just think Bayonetta 3 took Bayonetta in a very weird way, and Platinum Games has just taken Bayonetta in a very weird way with that prequel spin-off games also. So I think they've probably run Bayonetta as an idea and concept into the ground, and censorship these days is worse than it's been in a very long time, so a strong, sexually aware female protagonist is just not welcome as much as it might have been in the past. And the tsundere, dark hair girl with glasses style has, I think, evolved more into just being an old lady look. Just even looking here, she doesn't feel so much like she's wearing glasses for a fashion sense reason as much as she's just wearing glasses because she's old. And the hair outfit, I think, has been pretty much replaced now with an actual just cover her up as much as possible outfit. Looking at that image, yeah, this feels much more like a queenly, like older woman with these arm covers and this big frilly shirt appearance. Yeah. It almost certainly was wrong for the long-term actor to call for a boycott, the previous actor, and to make a complaint there. I think even at the time I wasn't really siding with the long-term actor. I think there's much more of a reason for a boycott in that Bayonetta 3 was just not being developed by the original creator, which is much more important than the voice actors staying the same in my book. And now retroactively there's a great reason not to play Bayonetta 3, which the game isn't out. It says it's due for release in October. Is it out now, or did it not come out in October? We're in December now. I think it came out. This is a really old story from the looks of it. How did I end up with this story? This is October 28th, 2022. Well, that's weird. I haven't even changed the code to open my news stories, so I have no idea why a story here from 2 years ago would have popped up. Yeah, it was Switch exclusive on October 28th, 22, which was a big issue. And then Kamiya left Platinum Games to form a new studio, Clovers, which is creating Okami 2, which I assume that came out too. Also, well, that feels like that is probably one of those cases where there was some weirdness in the whole setup. And here we have a Fortnite 0 Hour. Watch a replay of the full live event if you wanted to check that out. And centering issues are popping up again. I had the worst time trying to get all of these things to be centered. Like, I think Video Games Chronicle in particular has some pretty terrible HTML code and CSS code as far as it centers things one way versus another. And it probably looks great when you have the side banner and the advertisements and everything showing. So I can't really blame them for not optimizing for this filtered view that I have set up. But yeah, let's just show for a brief second the hideousness of what Video Games Chronicle looks like. And this is still with my router blocking ads, so that's why there's still just emptiness here. But it's just like add and in-house add and squeeze the actual story down to a high level. even without changing anything here, there is something that's not quite right, because the text here is squished in a weird way that you would think it wouldn't be squished here. But yeah, just nonsense upon nonsense upon nonsense. One of the things about fair use is that you use the smallest amount of things, just ads and ads and ads, to make your derived work. So actually, legally speaking, as I understand copyright, you're better off having a website be filtered to the bare minimum of stuff that we're actually talking about, and not having all the extra stuff. But yeah, just an absolutely hideous site. And yes, it doesn't have the Steam appearance of being blue. And that takes a lot of work to get from that to this. It looks completely different when you get to this, and it is considerably less information, actual relevant information, when you get to this, but it still needs a little bit more work. The next Video Games Chronicle article we have is the Steam machine could cost around $700, a build and analysis estimates. I think it means $6.99 USD if there are no changes in the market. Yeah, I think that's the minimum. It'd be nice, particularly if they're subsidizing it to get it down to $5.99. I don't think we're getting to a point where any new thing that feels like a console, whether it's a PC or a console, is going to be less than $5.99. Inflation has just crossed that $500 mark as being a price point in people's mind. Even $400 was really expensive. And certainly I'm old enough to feel like consoles should be $200 devices. Of course, back when consoles were $200 devices, $200 was probably the equivalent of $500. Although, in fairness, back when $200 devices were sold, there was considerably less other stuff to buy, and games weren't as expensive, and there weren't as many games. This is one of these articles where I suspect they have somebody just picking up a number and guessing, and I guess that somebody here is the Minus Tech Tips people. The guess is that to manufacture in bulk, it's costing Valve $602, so unless they were going to subsidize by at least $100 and $103, you wouldn't get it down to $500. But then they're also giving that range of $910. Yeah, I just don't think anybody really knows, but I would guess $700 to $1,000, which that is definitely a price point that's going to miss out on a lot of people. Like there are just going to be people who say no, they cannot afford that, and unfortunately it is going to be one of those cases, and it has been that case for a long time, that you either buy nice and buy once, or you buy poor and then you buy over and over again. There's a saying there, but I'm not sure what I don't really know the saying. Yeah, if you buy something that's a poor quality computer for $500, you're going to find that in a year or so, the computer is so underperformant that you're miserable with it and wanting another one. Yeah. And there definitely are things you can buy cheap, but hardware, computer hardware, is not really one of them, particularly if you're interested in gaming. And if you're not interested in gaming, then I don't know if you even need a computer these days. I think your phone may just be good enough for you. Phones are ridiculously expensive too. Thank goodness I didn't need to buy a phone this year. I did not see any cell phone deals at all. Unfortunately, part of the reason why I don't need to buy a new phone this year is because I have a phone from last year I haven't even moved over to. But yeah, there's a the only reason I buy new phones these days is because of the batteries getting shot on them. And yeah, even in that case, I'm mostly close enough to a plug that it doesn't matter. Charge the phone non-stop all day, or several recharges per day. But yeah, it's going to be a hard sale to convince people to buy a Steam machine. And if you were going to buy the Steam machine as a family computer, which is not really what it's designed for, you're throwing in a lot of extra stuff compared to buying a regular desktop computer that could be bigger and noisier. Just because you're not going to have space to plug in SATA drives. One of the things I'm going to buy is a new 8 terabyte hard drive. You can't throw an 8 terabyte hard drive extra as your backup drive into a Steam machine without buying a USB to SATA adapter and plugging it into it, which is going to add another $50 at minimum to any device, and that's excluding the cost of the drive, which is going to add another $150. So you're going to be $200 more expensive just to put a large amount of storage into a Steam machine, which you could definitely see them correcting that for much less if they had just had room on the side to put a machine, a 3.5-inch hard drive into it. That would have worked fairly well on bulk. You take the faceplate off and there is a drive slot right on the edge to connect to it. But they didn't do that, so yeah, $200. Still, even if they did do that, they wouldn't provide a hard drive with it, so you'd still be paying an extra $150 for the upgrade. Then you need a keyboard and mouse if you're going to turn it into your computer. If you don't have keyboard and mouse, that's all going to be on USB. You're going to very quickly want to probably have a USB hub for keyboard, mouse, single monitor or double monitors. I think it's only one HDMI out on the screen, so I wouldn't expect a Steam machine to be able to really handle doing multiple monitors out, which is another issue as far as a home PC, is that I find 2 to 3 monitors makes the most sense, or if you're going to do a 2x2 grid is really nice if you can do that. I've run 3 monitors myself and could certainly use a 4th. So yeah, potentially paying $700 to $1,000 for a Steam machine, and then also realizing, hey, I still need a home family PC for work, if you really do need that from work from home, is going to really suck. Yeah. And I guess that's always been the case. Although, I don't know how many people really need anything there. Need a home PC. Moving on, Metal Gear's producer says he's undecided on future remakes. Metal Gear Solid 4 would be a real challenge. Konami is currently deciding what to do next with the Metal Gear, the producer claims. Which I guess is a pretty okay response to say we're not sure, and Konami is going to be flippant about it. It'd be nice if he could come out with some strength and said, yes, we do plan on making future remakes, or but this is your basic, we have no announcements to make at this time response, which is still a fairly acceptable response to make. They are undoubtedly looking to see where they can make the most profit in sales. And yeah, I would like to see the entirety of series, all series, get remade if they're going to get remade. And for the Metal Gear Solid series in particular, that's kind of hard, and the Metal Gear series makes it even more hard. But nothing's impossible, certainly. Really, it's just going to come down to the will of Konami, which is not very much willish. Konami kind of sucks and is really just trying to make as much money as possible. And inherently, the original creator of Metal Gear is not working with Konami. They had a very public, nasty breakup, so any new Metal Gear game is not going to feel like it is artistically as pure because of that. Moving on, Capcom is reportedly working on a new Dead Rising sequel starring Frank West. The zombie action game received a remaster last year. I definitely feel like the Dead Rising series should have always been chasing Frank West throughout his adventures with different zombies in different locations. There was a little bit of censorship issues in that some of the t-shirts had like nudity in them at low res, and when they got re-resed they realized the t-shirts had nudity in them, so that got censored. Not a huge amount of censorship, but yeah, the arcadey style of dealing with a bunch of zombies on a timer is a kind of unique gameplay style and makes a little bit of sense and found an audience. I am more in general just happy to see Capcom potentially doing anything, because for as big of a name as Capcom, they really don't do anywhere as much as they should as far as game development goes. They have a whole bunch of Mega Man IP that they're doing nothing with. And if I was to really just look up a list of things that Capcom has worked on, let's see, can we do that? Did I keep the plugin for Capcom to get to Wikipedia? I don't think I did. Let's see, Capcom on Wikipedia. This is another page that I'll have to transfer the CSS out from, because yeah, this is obviously not how Wikipedia normally looks. Let's see, can we find a list of games from Wikipedia? Capcom has franchises like Resident Evil and Monster Hunter and Street Fighter, but then they are kind of ignoring Mega Man, Dead Rising, Devil May Cry, Ace Attorney, Marvel vs. Capcom, Onimusha. And obviously I need to adjust how some of this looks to make Wikipedia look better. So I guess it is probably a wrong statement to say Capcom is doing nothing. It's just that Capcom is not doing things that are recognizably Capcom. In that Resident Evil and Monster Hunter are so big as series that they stand out as being their own thing and don't remind us as much that Capcom is involved. And I think that's probably true for a lot of Japanese companies, whereas a Microsoft owned company, it's pretty obvious to know that Microsoft is involved in it, in my mind. Microsoft doesn't put out that many games in general either. Moving on, Hollow Knight's developers expect Silksong to lose at the Game Awards. Expedition 33 is exceptional, is the quote. Team Cherry is working on a Silksong DLC. So, yeah. I'd like to get a really good look at what the Game award actually looks like here. This pixely broken up appearance and is definitely something that feels digital and unreal. And I guess if you molded plastic in two tones, so it was like clear on the outside and then solid on the inside, you might be able to actually make an award in this shape. But I don't know if they really are in that shape. And clearly there is a focus here on having these angel statues look a lot like, I believe it's the Oscar statues. Yeah, I think it's the Oscars, not the Emmys. Yeah. Moving on. Kirby Air Riders tops the Japanese physical charts as Switch and Switch 2 games sweep the top 15. 18 of the top 20 games this week were released on Nintendo consoles. That is more common than Video Games Chronicle seems to indicate it, though. It is very much that Nintendo is dominating in Japan. And here's something I missed as far as further reading. So yeah, more than likely as I move the CSS around, I'll run into things I miss and work on clearing those out. Of course, all of this is somewhat repetitive work in that eventually that is going to all get turned and moved, well, not turned, but moved to my new computer. Although, who knows, I might be able to also back up settings to Google Drive. Increasingly, I want to back up settings to either Google Drive or GitHub. If I'm going to manually do it, I probably should put it on GitHub. But Google Drive would be nicer because it's easier to share things to personal people without sharing things to everybody on Google Drive. You can't do that on GitHub. And GitHub really is designed for something different. Speaking of GitHub, I thought Linus Torvalds, which I watched the Linus versus Linus Tech Tips, video, where it really was more of a question and answer session than a computer build, which is fine. I don't think Linus really cares that much about the fanciest and newest of hardware as far as computer builds go. But I thought it was a case that he was more interested and more happy that he worked on Git than he was working on the Linux kernel. And no, it's the exact opposite. I got the story completely backwards. He worked on Git for a brief time and then handed it over to someone else who's doing, he says, a great job on maintaining Git. GitHub is a website that uses Git in the back end, and not really affiliated with Git, I don't think, since it's owned by Microsoft now. But yeah, there is, I guess, mostly his focus is still maintaining the Linux kernel and being mostly a manager, a self-appointed, forced into the position manager of the Linux kernel. And Linus Torvalds is still doing a pretty good job at that. I had expected more in the video though, and yeah, there really wasn't anything too exciting there. in fairness, that is pretty much every interview and video I've seen of Linus Torvalds, is that I think he is more of a laid-back, chilled guy than you would really think he was, as he's sometimes portrayed as being a little persnickety. But yeah, he's kind of an old man, and just chilled and just being forced to be a strong leader to make sure that the Linux kernel doesn't fall into madness. Alright, well, this is a great time for my first break, so I'm going to take a bit of a break and I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. That was a kind of shorter break anyways. Yeah, none of the books I wanted to get are on sale as far as Black Friday goes, and I don't know if it isn't particularly just a case that the books I want to get are pretty niche. And yeah, in general, I added them all to Amazon just to see if they would go on sale, and I'll probably spend the next year seeing if they ever go on sale. It's kind of stupid for me to get books knowing I won't really read them, but heck, I buy anime knowing there's a decent chance I'm not going to watch them. I am in the end part of the back half of my life, I would say, where it is more about creating some kind of collection and legacy than it is about actually enjoying it myself, which is insane, just consumerism, flight thinking, but it's where I am at for collecting things that might be hard to get. But yeah, there wasn't any sales there. And for one of the book series, they're about to be reprinted. And that's the thing, I guess, also about books, is that it's probably pretty easy to just keep on printing them, and it's never really going to go out of print unless the company goes out of business, and book companies tend not to really go out of business that much. Moving on to the Gematsu articles. Let's see. Well, actually, before we do that, do I have any CSS being injected on any of this? No, I don't think I do. Okay. It's just wanting to double check that. So, the Zan collection has been announced for Switch. It's due out March 12th, 2026 in Japan. I have no idea what the Zan collection is, though. Did I get all of the CSS turned off on Gematsu? Yes, I did. For the most part, this should have just been a case of moving things from one plugin to another plugin, and that way just having one fewer plugin extension installed in Firefox. It is just a case that some of it took a little bit more time to apply, and the learning curve definitely was there, moving over to Violent Monkey. A Suikoden live broadcast has been set for December 16th. No new information is going to be announced, which is a crazy thing to say you're going to have a live broadcast and then say there will be no new information. Doesn't that just fully admit that it's a commercial? This week's Japanese game releases include Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, Octopath Traveler 0, and more. It's surprising always to me how games come out with such little fanfare the day of, the week before, and that all of the hype and fanfare is about getting people to pre-order games a year before, 6 months before. They don't really care about you actually playing the game. In fact, I think they prefer you to not play the game and just pre-order it and get your money, and then not put any negative reviews out or ask for any refunds until you're past the point in which you can ask refunds, which that's one of the good things about Steam, is that refunds are not tied at all to purchasing a game. So theoretically, a game I purchased but haven't played from years ago, I could go and ask for a refund, and their 2 hours no question asked refund policy would still apply. Which, I guess that would mean you could probably cash out on a bunch of games you didn't actually play. And I wonder how that would really work. You can only do it so many times before Steam is going to start asking questions, though. So it's not like you could habitually buy games on a Humble Bundle and then activate the games via key and get a refund that way. In fact, I think in that case you wouldn't get a refund anyways. You would have to instead be buying games during a Steam sale and then getting the game. But even then, you're only refunding it for the price you actually purchased it on. So it doesn't really have to be a Steam sale at all. In fact, you'd be better off if you were trying to do something like this to buy an extremely expensive super deluxe edition of a game and then never play it and then ask for a refund. Yeah. And there's very few scenarios where that would make sense, instead of just getting the games you want. But there is one scenario. Let's say you had somebody else buying games for you when you were a kid and you didn't really want anything at the moment, but you knew in the future you were going to want something. So you ask for a super deluxe edition that's like $100 for a game. Then you turn around and refund that game and you get store credit and you buy something different. And if you were to follow the sneaky teenager thought, you ask for a $100 super deluxe edition of a game that's family friendly, then you refund it, and then you have $100 in credit to get something that's more not so family friendly one way or the other, whether it's violence or sex or something else. That would be a really sneaky way, I guess you could do things that way. Of course, there's many ways to prevent something like that happening, such as paying attention to your kid and what they're buying and controlling what they're buying and having Steam Family set up so they can't do things like that. But yeah, in my case, I guess I could refund something and get some cash if necessary, to not actual cash, but credit to buy other games. Yeah. And I suppose if you were a content creator, it might make some sense to do something like that, buy everything new, and then if you don't get around to actually covering it in time for it to be relevant, then maybe refunds would make some sense there. But again, you'd get caught after asking for 2 or 3 refunds. More than likely they'd start asking questions on Valve's side. But yeah, that was a long ramble. And yeah, didn't have much to do with the Japanese game releases. Moving on, Where Winds Meet for iOS and Android launches December 12th in the West. It features crossplay and shared progress with the PS5 and PC version. Interesting. It is certainly interesting how mobile games these days can be on the same level and interconnected to console and PC games. That there really isn't that big of a loss in quality or a loss of playability, considering how mobile games don't have controller support. Well, not really. Eden.schemata has been delayed to 2026. We've seen plenty of delays already on games, and I expect to see more. We have here 2 different anime girls, one different colored eyes and a different look in the reflection here. Then a noticeable what looks like plug or port on her back. Is this a visual novel? Yes, it is. That would be my guess. Usually when you see anime styles and a name I don't recognize. The occult horror visual novel Resquience, The Orchard has been announced for PC. This is a different artistic style, for the thumbnail at least. Let's watch this trailer and see what it looks like. Yeah. It definitely has more of that pencil sketched, feels a little Korean art style. They don't have a lot to show there. And I guess at this point, I'm just immune to jump scares in general, so it was fairly obvious to me that as soon as you look down on the screen, that is the feint, where it makes you think you're going to see something creepy on the screen, and then he looks back up and sees something creepy in the real world. Which, in fairness, in modern days, if you saw something creepy on the screen, you just assume it's fake animated CGI stuff, so really wouldn't be that spooky in the first place. Our suggestions are still working. Glad to see that. I'm going to continue to test that to see if there aren't some that slip through. I bet there aren't any that slip through though, because I'm not catching it by URL or something that they could change on their back end easily. I'm catching it by their CSS code, which they could change on their back end, but would take more of a commitment on the part of YouTube to change. Yeah. And as far as YouTube is concerned, I am seeing that content. It is only changing things on the server side, so I mean on the client side. So yeah, as far as YouTube is concerned, that information was downloaded and seen by me, and that's all they really care about, so that I get advertised to. Which, yeah, boy, would I love to live in a world where advertisements were highly restricted / regulated instead of the hellscape that is capitalism on the internet in 2025. Yeah. Well, you have to have an ad blocker just to bother to even use the internet, and even then the internet has turned into a very poor product overall, full of AI slop now, making it even worse. Moving on, Core Keeper is coming to the Switch 2 on January 28th, 2026, alongside the Void and Voltage update. Now, because this is Gematsu articles, we're also going to be keeping an eye out for the text replacement script, which is special specifically to this domain to shorten the number of consoles being named. They write the order of the consoles in a very specific way. What kind of game is this? Say it's an adventure game. No. It's only a minute long, so let's look at it. Yeah, it's always interesting how you get these thumbnails and then out of nowhere it's a Stardew Valley tiny pixely game from the looks of it. Seems like it might have a little bit more mechanisms to the system, and maybe it has 4-player control, which changes some things. Yeah, I don't know if we're maybe going full circle now and they are introducing an idea of this art style being the new hotness, which would be weird. This definitely feels like you only would be able to win is if you have 4 or 5 people playing at the same time. And those types of games tend to always be impossible for me to play. Let's see. Union Syndrome Rhythm Psychosis has been delayed to April 2026. I would assume this is a rhythm game. Let's see if we can watch this trailer. I have no idea what Union means, if it means anything. Apparently it's a name of a game, of a name of a character. Alright. So it seems like it's a half rhythm game, although it may not actually be a rhythm at all in the actual gameplay, as much as it might be a gacha game or a horror game. Yeah, this this really doesn't feel like it's just a pure uh, rhythm game as much as this is a bizarre horror game. They mentioned dokis. Doki Doki is the Japanese sound of a heartbeat, so it's like going thump thump in the Looney Tunes style of it's making my heart beat because I'm in love. Yeah, they're calling it a rhythm adventure game as far as the tags go. Into the Fire launches in early access of 2026. Is this a firefighting game? Let's watch this trailer just so I don't get accused of only watching the anime trailers. Which, in fairness, you kind of need to see the anime trailers more. Than they're the ones that have more action and more animation that is wilder and crazy. This is a weird trailer with voiceover. What's intriguing about this is that you are potentially fighting in a first-person shooter against fire instead of against some kind of creature. But I don't know if that's really what this game is, as much as this is some kind of weird horror type story where you play as a firefighter, which even that is interesting. Yeah, they're calling it an action adventure survival RPG game. So either that is a really bizarre trailer for a game that's going to play very differently than what it looks like it's going to play as, or it's a very interesting twist on a first-person shooter mechanic. Let's see, moving on, Float Sim launches December 5th. It's going to be leaving early access after 6 years. It's crazy how many games are still doing early access for years and years. Now I'm noticing something didn't work here. I don't have the auto open Steam links enabled. Whoops. Well, you know what? We're gonna today just live with that, and we'll see what happens later. But yeah, I took out all the JavaScript, so the auto open Steam links should have been kicking in here, and games that were being talked about should have had their Steam link opened automatically. We've been through several Gamatsu articles though, and this is the first one that even kicked in. Yeah, my problem with this is certainly going to be, is it just going to be a city management game? Because I still am iffy on whether I really want to play city management games. Put that on the follow list. And that didn't work for some reason. Do I have something here that's causing a problem with adding things to the follow list. Ooh. If that's the case, that's something I'm gonna have to check. I guess the easiest way to check that would be to turn this off completely, and we can see what is going on. Apparently there's an Indie Live Expo sale going on. We'll take a moment to look at that, and then see that this is already on the follow list. Okay, then I'm going to turn this back on. See if it says it's already on the follow list. Now the thing I haven't done yet is moved the code completely into changing these checkboxes. I want to significantly change them so that they will automatically gather the data from YouTube Shorts and save them as some kind of file, hopefully a structured file, and not a random file that would just be put in my default download folder and would potentially even click adding things to the follow list, which would require triggering a JavaScript code, because these aren't proper HTML buttons, these are run by JavaScript. I have updated the adult content warning to pop up, but I haven't gotten it to grab AI disclosures, which this game doesn't have an AI disclosure or a mature content disclosure, and do something more with it. In general, I want to also grab the language, so I want to see if English in particular is supported in interface, full audio, and subtitles, and I want to grab that and put this in the spar. I want to put an AI if there's AI being used. I want to put VR if VR is being used, and I want to put more mature content. I don't think it actually needs to be put here because there's going to be a pop-up on that anyways, but I do want to put a button, maybe a checkbox, maybe some other button that will just automatically make a YouTube short at that point and would potentially close the window at the same time, so I don't have to have these windows open to deal with them running a macro after the fact. All of that would speed things up. I might even want to put a button over here, but I might just put buttons over here as far as a yes, no button, and maybe just going back and forth in that way between closing a tab just to close it, or closing a tab to and making a YouTube short on it. But yeah, it also had to be fairly fast as far as what it was going to do. So I probably would have these pages automatically collect all the data it wants to make a YouTube short and have it ready to go, which honestly wouldn't take that long anyways. So there's still a lot of ambition left to be done. Here you can see a particularly low res image that has been scaled up, and it can be an art style, but I think a lot of times it is just a sadness that either you sharpen an image to the point where it's over sharp like this, and then try and smooth an image, and it doesn't really help. There's just really no way to upscale images particularly well. It's a shame that YouTube doesn't let you have vertical thumbnails, because something like this would be a great source of vertical thumbnails. This Magical Princess game, I think, is a daughter raising simulator we looked at before. We just looked at Union. This is a bullet hell slash card game slash hack and slash game. I guess it's not so much always bullet hell hack and slash game. Man, that looks like that is all over the place as a game. And it's funny, until you see Into the Fire, you would think indie games are just anime games. Yeah. But yeah, it is potentially the case where the indie genre is going to have a lot more anime developers get shoved back into that indie genre. Keep digging. It looks like that digging in the backyard taken to a new extreme with multiplayer, which is not a terrible thought. Took a really long time though for somebody to make a game like that. Man, it looks like I could just open a bunch of these. Yeah, I'm just gonna open a ton of these games and look at them. But yeah, I am more interested in indie than I guess I am mainstream games. That's probably more than enough to look at, though. They are usually the ones that have a willingness to try something new compared to companies that are just not in any way interested in that. Something like that Lucky Coin Pusher might be something I could have running in the background while I take a break. I'm always looking for something different from Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, considering I'm not really playing that game. It's a shame that Belartro doesn't have replays. Let's look at the Indie Live Expose Awards. See if they've done anything there. No, apparently they're just giving awards to these games. Then there's some that we've probably already seen discounted and some that we've probably already seen that are upcoming. What's interesting here, I guess, is that there's no Steam Deck connectivity. And it looks like there's what they're calling a broadcast, which is either not happening at the moment or just not loading. Yeah. See if we go back a little bit and see if anything plays then. Nope, does not want to load at all. Interesting. So, Demonic Mahjong. Does this have in-app purchases? No. Is this tagged as having anything mature in it? Well, it's tagged as having sexual content in it. Which, yeah. The thing, and maybe this is a mistake, is that my adult content warning box is only going to pop up if one of those tags in the sexual content, hentai, or nudity is in the top popular tags here. If it's not in the top popular tags, it's not going to pop up, and that may be a mistake. And this one noticeably only has an AI generated content warning, and from the looks of it, this is the one. It's one of these games where I bet there really isn't that much sexual content. It's lewd. You see some cleavage, and that's probably just about it. Although I don't know if that is still something that YouTube is just going to start cracking down on and saying even that's not acceptable. Yeah. But at the moment, I would consider this acceptable for broadcast for adults to see on YouTube, not made for kids content, as it's labeled. So I'm going to add that to the wish list. Now, the problem that I have to fully admit is that there's always the chance of a complete liar putting a game on Steam that has no tags that would bring up a warning and no disclosure and just has completely inappropriate images on its screenshots. But I think that there's probably some level of safety nets being put in place to prevent something like that. And I think in general, part of the safety nets is that they want to use the nudity and the mature and the sexual content tags to get more people to buy their games. So, yeah. This too feels like this might be lewder than it seems like it is going to be. A bunch of random stuff. Asset flipped into a coin pusher game, which maybe gives it a bit of a Balertro feel. That's what I'm thinking about. There's that it's Balertro. Omega Crafter here is mixed in its most recent reviews, 63%. This Toho game is rated very positively. It looks like it is a rhythm/visual novel game. I honestly think at this point the Toho series of games, as far as it being its almost own genre, is starting to lose its appeal to me, and I'm starting to just feel like I'm better off dismissing Toho games offhand completely, just because there's not enough of them that are good enough for me to want to really play. This Hike Northern Lights feels like it's a more adventure-y type experience. Yeah, so I'll add that to the wish list. I'll just skip the follow list. By the way, I just naturally added something to the follow list without any problem, so that it must have just been a brief problem there. There's a Wiretap Mountain. Looks good. What's weird about this is I've seen these games, but I dismissed these games. And I don't know why I did that. That doesn't really fall... That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me as to why I would have done that. Usually when I'm exhausted or in some kind of mood, I err on the side of caution, so I don't know what would happen. This looks like a Stardew Valley game, but it does feel like there's a lot more to it, and the artistic style definitely makes it stand out quite a bit. So I'm going to put that on the follow list. Great Villainist Strategy of Lily. I think it's based off of an anime. There's so many animes like it. Let's go ahead and just put that on the wish list. Yeah. There is a danger that when I move everything around here, I'm going to have a chunk of YouTube shorts that are made one way as a middle step, and then I'm going to have a chunk of more modern YouTube shorts made a different way. Regardless, I don't think I have any YouTube shorts still airing on my channel, and probably would be a great time to have YouTube shorts ready to air on my channel, but I don't have any, and don't really have a great way of making a bunch. Although I guess I could try. This is an interesting art style, although this one screenshot feels just completely different than all the other screenshots. There's drips of red paint or blood, and then every other thing here feels more inspired by a early Christian era murals. Although, in fairness, I would say this imagery in particular feels more inspired by Neon Genesis Evangelion, End of Evangelion in particular. We got a fairly small amount of information there, unless we hit play. Let's hit play and see what that shows us. It's a Japanese voiceover talking while classic music is playing in the background. Yeah, it definitely feels inspired. This definitely feels like a End of Evangelion inspired experience. The voice is very angry at the person. Now we're getting flashes. The thought here is that the painter painted worlds and then painted over those worlds, thus destroying them and that affecting someone. So obviously this game is about a painter. Some very unique light hand-drawn visual novel thing. Keep Digging, more of a Western feeling game. Now, it's a laid-back co-op digging game for up to 8 players. Dig 1,000 meters, sell what you find, and keep upgrading your gear. It feels like there's a lot more polish, probably a lot more asset flipping going on here. And that you are not just going to singularly dig downward into nothing, and instead you're digging downward into several discoveries. Some kind of ancient cathedral with some kind of bone / monster, which, yeah, frame rate's still terrible here. Yeah, let's see if the frame rate gets better. So yeah, this does feel like this is a goof around type experience. Honestly, I feel like this may need to be even 480 to get really good frame rate on it. Honestly, I think that they're just not processing the frames correctly. So yeah, apparently I'd already even seen this game, but I'll put it on the follow list. It is one of these games where you really are probably better off playing with friends. Yeah, the frame rate looks way better in this animated GIF. Haunted Room or Rami-chan does support English. That's all I can really say at this moment. Yeah, we've taken a break here. I'm gonna say no to that one. In looking at these games from this event, format definitely looks like a horror game that might be worth checking out. We have 4 more games. This one potentially doesn't support English from the title you can see up there, or they haven't decided on what the English translation of the title is going to be. Sacred Fire might be something. And Into the Fire definitely is something that interests me. And then Tsurugihime I think might be something too. So a lot of games here that are not on the follow list. I don't know why that would be the case. June 2025. I must have really just done a follow list cleanup. More than likely that's exactly what I did. I did a follow list cleanup and anything with to be announced on it was removed in the assumption that I would see it again. Which in fairness is not a wrong assumption in that I probably will see these games again. But I am also now feeling like there's some things I missed when I may have intentionally not missed them. This is the Keep Digging version 2.0 trailer, which is different. No, that was a problem with a game about digging a hole, which is I believe the name of the original game that took this concept, is that it just did not go any further. It didn't update itself, where it would have made a lot of sense for it to continue to update itself and grow an audience, and by growing an audience potentially build itself up for a sequel instead of having other companies steal the idea of a simplistic digging game, which honestly it's not too different from Minecraft, but it's more focused specifically on digging and less on adventuring. Let's see. Sanabi free DLC A Haunted Day for Switch launches this winter. I don't recognize a game called Sanabi though. And I have to tell you, once I get that seat cushion air inflator, alternating pressure air inflator, I might be able to sit through streams like this a lot better. It's fairly common that I'm taking breaks just to stand up and walk around and let my seat cushions re-inflate versus actually needing to take a break to go to the bathroom or eat or do something else. And I'm trying to keep a little bit of an eye on like Slick Deals just to see if anything pops up, but a late in the evening Black Friday sale is unlikely to really pop up. I did see something that was a cool idea, which was the idea of using a CNC machine to make drawers, effectively flat pack drawers designed to flat pack drawers designed to be easy to assemble without hardware. The handles are made out of wood using CNC cutting. The bases are wood. That would be the things that I would say that you could improve upon it, is that it's not using any metal drawer slides, so the drawers are going to come in and out a little rough, more than likely, unless you wax the heck out of the wood. The door handles are still pull handles that you would normally see, but they're made out of wood, when it would make a lot more sense to avoid using handles altogether and just having a cutout or a hidden inset handle, which I'd prefer that anyways. And then the base floor toe kick parts don't have any adjustability to them at all, whereas having adjustable feet on a toe kick would make a lot of sense. That is one thing about the IKEA sets, is that they have adjustable feet, so you have a nice even surface to start your cabinets on. Each drawer in the cabinet effectively is printed and separate from each other, and you stack them and then lock them in together as screws, so they look pretty rigid. You might do the glue and screw method for extra strength, but I don't think it would add too much. You're also not attaching any of it to the back of a wall. Yeah, I'm looking at the Slick deals right now, and only thing, there's a Woot 4-pack for $45 for 4 Samsung Smart Tag 2s, which they're probably the best tags if you're not going to get an air tag, but they are also not super necessary for most people's cases. I got one already through Amazon Haul, cheaper, and yeah, one is probably as many as I'd ever need. They do have ultra wideband detection in them, so theoretically they'll point you within a couple feet in the direction that something is lost, versus a smart tag, which may just give you a generic yard or two location of where something is lost. But yeah, I doubt we're going to see a Samsung Smart Tag 3 announced. I think they probably are just dropping support for the products and getting rid of the ones, since they have batteries in them, replaceable batteries, but batteries nonetheless that are probably dying. That's why a lot of devices went on sales, because they've been sitting on the shelves for a year or two and the batteries are probably dying, and they don't want the device to have the battery drain out and leak battery acid on the shelves when they can sell them at a loss. Plus, having things sit on the shelf costs warehousing fees. Dead Format launches December 10th. VHS survival horror game has been dated. We didn't watch the trailer on that, I don't think. But I don't think we really need to either. I need to speed up. And Suguri Hime launches in early access in 2026. Another game we just looked at. And then Being and Becoming playtest is set for December, which I guess from the look of it, this is some kind of female monster, assuming you define large chests as being female. And the cut of this outfit being female. Let's watch this trailer. Yeah. So it's like an underwater adventure. Which weirdly, this might be the best way to implement something as an underwater adventure, would be to make effectively just a platforming game or a different type of game and set it underwater. Yeah, this looks very much like a Castlevania game. Interesting. Story-driven adventure game All Adrift was announced for PC. See, now this is the weird thing is, why is Gematsu covering these games now when I've seen them before? It must be a case, really, that the press releases for a lot of games don't get put out until weeks or months after they've already made a Steam page, which probably is the case. It's from a South Korean developer, Vitkin, which would explain a little bit the half anime, half different art style. Not quite a Japanese anime style of animation. Yeah, there's slight noticeable differences very often between Korean and Japanese animators. A side-scrolling action-adventure game, Avery Mary, Rocket Captain Patchwork, has been announced for PC. This is the one I chose to skip. Didn't look particularly polished enough. But at a certain point, anything that there is really... anything that bothers to put out a press release probably deserves a YouTube short made after it, at the very least, even if it doesn't make it to my personal follow list. A life intervention type watchover game, Haunted Room Urami-chan. You travel back and forth between the present and the past of a room in an apartment. Okay. Not really sure how that plays as a game. Let's see if we can watch this trailer and see if that explains it more. So the main protagonist seems to have died, and this ghost is looking at the character dead, so I assume that ghost is a different ghost than what you would expect from the dead character. So I guess you're playing as this ghost who's trying to prevent people from dying in scenarios, intervening to save them. Otherwise the building is going to get demolished, and if the building gets demolished, then I would assume the ghost leaves at that point. So it's actually a puzzle game where you are haunting the place because in the future you know she's gonna die from something. Interesting. So when you look at a game like this, boy, do you have a very different experience compared to your standard first-person shooter, military shooter game. And I love to see games like this where it's taking some very interesting twists. And there's a logic behind it that is probably harder to figure out, but you would have to be some kind of invisible character to be able to intervene without being seen and interacted with. So Ghost is a good one. Also, it gives you that magical element of explaining away how you can travel in time, although it's not generally thought that ghosts can travel through time. It would be interesting if you told them, if a lot of stories came out like that, and his very cartoony in its style because it wants to not hinder on the darkness of death too much, too. And then its setting of a building, a house, is to keep the scenes and the puzzles small and easy to understand. This may not be that long of a game, but there might be multiple acts and multiple people who end up dying. And I guess if you were ghost haunting a place, you would probably see a lot of other people die if you're there for hundreds upon hundreds of years, if a place stays around for hundreds and hundreds of years. Which, I don't know if those kinds of buildings in Japan really would stay around that long. More classic onsens, spas, and things, and castles will stay around for hundreds of years in Japan, have stayed around for hundreds of years in Japan, but a more modern looking building is likely going to be demolished as soon as somebody sells it, because they intentionally want new buildings. They don't want, they feel like old buildings are haunted, which is not really a great way to run a society, but it's how they feel. And a lot of Japanese buildings are pretty old garbage anyway, so tearing them down and starting over is not the worst thought. Moving on, Sacrifier open playtest. Open is set for January of 2026. Which, okay. We'll leave it at that. We don't need to watch every trailer. Hashin Shoujo no Araki Mikyo debut trailer is available. It's a visual novel RPG. This is the one that on Steam did not have a title. So I'm not sure if this isn't a case that Gamatsu is just able to read the kanji or able to translate it, which, yeah. It might be a little hard to translate a stylized logo like that, but it wouldn't be that hard, and you wouldn't really have to. The Steam page is going to give you the non-stylized kanji. Yeah, I could translate it easily just with right-clicking and clicking translate if I wanted to. What I'm seeing about this is the character designs tend to be a little bit taller and a little bit mature. Still anime girls instead of anime women, but they are, I think, increasingly leaning towards a different style than what has been the style in the past, where the characters tend to be shorter and younger, perceivably younger. Although that might have more to do with the themes of this game than anything, and that they want the characters to be a little bit sinister and older. And all the information here is being blurred out in the press release. Let's see. Danganronpa 2x2, 6 minutes of special trial version gameplay. New footage from stage event at the Danganronpa 15th Anniversary Festival, or Fez as they call it. I think 2x2 is a whole new game, and I don't think you can skip 2 and play 2x2, but maybe you can. Still trying to wrap my brain around that as far as whether one way is to play or the other. I guess in general, having just played Danganronpa 1, I still am in the position that I need to catch up if I'm going to play the rest of them, which I think I will eventually, if I can find enough time. Little Rocket Lab for Switch 2 and Switch launches December 10th. Now, this is a game, a headline, where it should have said Switch 1 / Switch 2 as far as a text replacement. I may not have that programmed because Switch 2 is fairly new, but you could definitely see where Switch /2, Switch 1 / 2 would take less characters and make this headline less wordy instead of Switch 2, Switch, as it is here. Do I have anything else I want to really say about that? No. So, I'm going to highlight that text so I remind myself what I'm going to do with that later. Trouble Witches, Episode 01, Daughters of Amalgam, launches December 15th in the West. Just assume that this is a shoot 'em up game. That's exactly what it is. I don't know if we really need to look at the trailer to see shoot 'em up as far as what it is. They have some interesting character selection games and visual novel, and yeah, more of a chibi art style on the character designs. This apparently was released as DLC before. And this is what the actual gameplay is side-scrolling shoot 'em up game. Really shouldn't be called shoot 'em up if you're not going upward, though. It should be shooter, but that sounds like a first-person shooter. So shoot 'em left, shoot 'em right. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Side shooter, side-scrolling shooter. Does that even make sense? A side-scrolling shooter is probably, yeah, the better way to describe it than side-scrolling shoot 'em up, which is kind of contradictory. Let's see. Tormented Souls 2 sales have topped 100,000. New content is on the way. This is actually really the only news we have today from Gematsu, whereas everything else is just announcements for new games and press releases, which it's interesting certainly to see these indie games taking a moment in the middle of the Christmas holiday to announce games that aren't going to be out until next year. But I guess that just goes to highlight how they don't really care or even think about Christmas and not way that holiday goes for these kinds of announcements. And noticeably all those games, or almost all those games, are targeting more of an Asian audience, or at least an Asian fandom. We aren't seeing announcements for more Call of Duty or Black Ops at this time. I would say Tormented Souls is perhaps a wider audience, though. But they didn't have a new announcement other than to say they're over 100,000 sales, and good for them. I hope we see that number crawl up higher. As things go. Yeah, I don't know if it's really saving me a lot of time. We're already 3 hours and 10 minutes into the stream. I don't know if not opening Steam links saved me any time today at all. This definitely has that old school Resident Evil 1 feel to it. I guess I can also say that the 2 new vitamins I've been taking for my eyesight feel like they have been helping a little bit. My eyes are not feeling as tired or, frankly, in pain as they were before. So if it is a placebo effect, it still seems to be working. Although at a certain level, placebo effects only really affect the pain. The placebo effect is not going to affect if you actually have a broken arm. 0% of people are going to get their arm magically healed if they take a placebo pill. But yeah, I do think my eyes might be getting a little bit better, thank goodness for that. But who knows what's going to happen in the future. I don't know if I'm ever going to get to a point where I can just take the far-sighted glasses I'm wearing off and stop using them. It's probably been a couple of years since I've been able to fully see the text from across the screen, and really nobody was supposed to be able to see the text from across the screen on a computer monitor output and the computer output of the screen, which are TVs that are 8 feet away, needed to be a foot away always for nearsightedness. But mostly I'm concerned about reading street signs from a distance and finding the turns. Moving on, Code Vein 2 prologue trailer is available. I guess we'll watch that. That was one of the things I saw during the Black Friday sales, is that they're trying to sell like scooters, which if I could convert 2 electric scooters into something that was big enough to look like a car, I might get something like that. But the thing about these electric scooters is A, I'd fall over, so I really need 3 wheels, and B, it would be so small that when you're on the road you're going to get run into by other people in cars and trucks, which that's always the danger, is that it's just the other drivers are not trained to look for people on bicycles, motorcycles, things like that, and so you have to be superbly alert and very cautious. The other issues are not having something over your head when it rains, not having air conditioning, which would be a big one for me. So I would much prefer a 3-wheeled tiny car-like device with AC and a roof. And even something like that is still probably going to cost several $1,000s. In reality, I could probably just Uber everywhere I go for as rare as I go somewhere. And that's probably going to be the case for me in the future anyways, if I can't see the signs, the street signs. I'm paying several $100s every 6 months to insure a car that I drive maybe 2 or 3 times in 6 months. It's crazy, and something I plan on changing in the future. Just can't do it at the moment. This trailer is just someone talking in Japanese, so it's telling a story with melodic piano music playing in the background, but it's all in Japanese, so I couldn't tell you anything about it. Alright, well that's going to bring us to the Gaming on Linux articles, which we don't have too many that have opened up, so I would assume that is just a case that between Friday, Black Friday, and Cyber Monday, not a lot of video game news happened, which makes a lot of sense. Let's see, do we even check on the Gematsu articles? Did we turn off all the CSS and stuff? Yes, all of that is done. Okay, so we have all the CSS and JavaScript turned off here. Yes. Do we have this turned off? No. So uBlock Origin was the third extension that I'm trying to get away from. You can see without uBlock Origin, there are several advertisement things or just irrelevant things that need to be blocked. So I need to work on gaming on Linux some more. Yeah, there's just going to be several of these streams where I realize that there's a little bit more to work on, to tweak it and get it all going. Hytale arrives in early access on January 26th after being revived. This is, I guess, Hytale, a 16-minute video. So Hytale looks like it is Minecraft with a higher emphasis on combat, because yeah, you definitely would have killed most creatures in 2 or 3 hits in that case, and here it definitely is way more emphasized on combat. He cut through the grass there. So I think there probably is a room for Minecraft to be at its level of combat, and then a Minecraft clone to be at a higher level of combat. Yeah. But it's still gonna feel very much like Minecraft. I don't know how many people you're going to convince to move from Minecraft to Hytale. Yeah. Moving on. Moonlighter 2, the Endless Vault, has another patch for the Steam Deck and to improve performance for all. There's something weird about the size there. That should be the size. Makes a lot more sense. Must have zoomed out for some reason before. It's a shame that Bastion never got a sequel. This feels a lot like Bastion. And so you're a moonlighter in this game, in that you're running around through adventures to collect loot and then sell it in your store, which really just feels like you're adding a garbage gameplay mechanic of running a store into a decent gameplay mechanic of adventuring. I'm not seeing any indication that these are procedurally generated levels, so I don't know if there's going to be, I'm not sure if there's really going to be a value in rerunning the same levels over and over again. So yeah, it doesn't look terrible. There's a lot in this game that may not be necessary. Yeah. So I guess the thought here would be to go check out Moonlighter 1. Again, the Steam links didn't open up. Apparently didn't make a YouTube short on this. See, that's one of the concerns about the checkboxes, is that maybe it's inaccurate. And inaccuracy is always a problem. And that maybe I am making YouTube shorts, or at least taking the step to make YouTube shorts around games, and then it's not getting marked with something. Yeah. So, yeah. Moonlighter 2 is entering early access at the moment. Or is it in early access? Since November 19th. Moonlighter 1 seems to have a bit more of a pixely graphic style to it, but it is rated very positively, thus it's on my wish list. Then our third and last Gamatsu article, not Gamatsu article, Gaming on Linux article, is Mango HUD Performance Overlay for Linux version 0.8.2 has been released. Okay. This does feel like this is one of the overlays, if not the default overlay that people use. I'm kind of have the feeling that this overlay is actually what the Steam OS overlay is. They are just using that same code and putting it in by default, maybe putting some different settings and polish to it. And then that would bring us to GameDeveloper.com, but we don't have any GameDeveloper.com articles at all, which is again very believable. So then that brings us to all the new games on Steam. So I say it every time, when I swipe like this, it means I'm leaving the game open to make a YouTube short on it. When I swipe down like this, I'm closing the tab. We may eventually get JavaScript code to stop doing the swiping and instead clicking buttons. If I'm really interested in something, I'll put it on the follow list. So it wouldn't make a lot of sense to put the buttons here instead. So I just go back and forth between the smallest number of pixels as possible. In this case, too, we're keeping an eye out for any games that might have adult content, but for some reason don't have any of the adult content tags as their first tags, which in fairness, a lot of these games have tags at the bottom that seem like they were added by trolls or are not accurate tags in the first place, even if they were added by the developers themselves. And yeah, I clicked to put down the follow list, but I did not stay around to see if it actually showed up on the follow list. Mono race, racing with a monocycle, might be something. VR is still going to be a thing. Still get a lot of these jigsaw puzzle games. Played Sword 2 feels like an older game getting released on PC for the first time. Menu doesn't look good enough. Ball tag doesn't look good enough. I'm gonna say no to Scython Cat also. Yep. Gonna say no about that game. Here we have probably an AI game, since it's AI Game Studio. My Daughter and Family AI. Yeah. Let's see. AI generated content is included in the application. Please use it in compliance with local regulations. So is there a country already that says no to AI in particular? This feels very Chinese in the game and very AI generated. And definitely feels like there's a dress up element to the outfits. one would assume that this is the daughter character for as much as you're seeing her. It'd be weird if this was the daughter, but not crazy weird. And this feels like a daughter raising simulator type game with a heavy Chinese twist to it. The AI Clothing Expansion Edition includes extra clothes. It all includes AI. Yeah. And it definitely feels like this is a Princess Maker inspired AI slop game. But notice we did not have a pop-up there. It would be intriguing, I guess, if there is a jurisdiction where AI is being restricted even a little bit, but I haven't heard of any country willing to do that yet. Wouldn't be the worst thought, but who would do it? It would probably be some tiny nation that has no AI infrastructure, or a very controlled country like China or Russia. And even in that, China and Russia would probably just say you can't use AI for products targeting our own citizens, but you can use it targeting foreigners. But I could see Japan maybe saying no to AI in particular because of their just appreciation of artists and artistry more. But I bet even Japan wouldn't do it. I can see countries like Australia saying no to AI in porn, and plenty of countries potentially coming out and saying you can't use AI to deepfake porn people. There are already laws against deepfaking, and AI is just going to make deepfaking easier and more unrecognizable. I have no idea what this game is, but it looks good enough that it might be something. Arctic Digger as a digging game with trading cards. Seems too crazy of a combination to actually come out and be a good game. Say no to that. I already said yes to that one. There definitely are ones that already have a checkbox and are on the fall list. I could close those automatically. That would save me some time. Just because I've already dealt with them, and so there's really no reason to highlight the games again. Just because they maybe now are actually out available for sale. Particularly since part of what I'm also still working on is improving a new system for follow list cleanup. But yeah, if I add the follow list cleanup as a concept, I am definitely not going to be saving any time in these streams. I'm going to make them even longer. I feel like I'm slowly just boiling a frog here, with myself being the frog, and making streams just always be longer and longer and longer. I would expect that we would not see too many games worth mentioning at this juncture. This is just a very weird time to put out an early access game or release your game. I guess maybe you would think there'd be less competition, and in that you'd be right, but there also is going to be less eyes. And I think eyes and impressions you might get is probably way more valuable than competition is an issue. Bunch of T-posed characters. I might have given this a chance if it weren't for the T-posing characters and the low polygon graphics. A game called The Woods, which looks not polished enough. Voice co-op. As in voice control, I wonder? Yeah. This is prologue. I'm going to say no to that. We have an overwhelmingly positive game that still just does not scream to me like something I'd actually want to play. There's a few games like that, a few genres. Give this a chance. Line box. Well, at some level, a game like this might have caught my attention, but it's mostly negative. Is that because it's in-app purchases? No. So what's the negativity around it? The idea of opening blind boxes is cool, but the only thing is that rules is that you have to wait 1 hour and 15 minutes to get 5 vouchers to open up one box. And in that time, there's nothing to do to entertain or anything. It's kind of boring in my opinion. Having to wait that long doing nothing just to open one box. Not worth really playing in my opinion. Yeah, feels like they wanted to have in-app purchases and Steam is telling them no as it's still learning about the game. And so maybe they'll let them have in-app purchases at some point in the future to speed it up, but even at that, there's still a big problem in that you cannot have a gacha game that only appeals to people who want to pay. There has to be something that the free-to-play players can do to grind or at least find some level of entertainment with. Certainly wouldn't be playing Memento Mori if there was nothing that could be done without paying money to get the characters. That would never work. And if you make a game like that, your audience is going to be way too small. This looks like this would be an interesting game, but it's very mixed reviewed vaudeville as a game. Although I'm not sure all of this really is reminiscent of vaudeville. AI trash, no ending, you just talk to AI that keeps changing info every other answer. Interesting. So, AI-driven detective game where the information gets changed because you're talking to AI. So you could never actually figure out the mystery. So yeah, we're seeing a great example there of how AI is making video games worse as it's making everything worse. But there is a need for warning around that. But I don't need it to be a full-on pop-up screen. And at this point, the AI extension, which I based my own pop-up screen off of, the code is so different now, and honestly, I probably would do well to rewrite the existing code to make it a little simpler to understand. But if it works, I'm not going to change things. But yeah, it is significantly different now that it's pretty unrecognizable as the same code. Some of it would be exactly the same anyways, but it's a derivative work, certainly, but it is closer to having a lot of original content in it than just small tweaks. Not that I really care, it's not like I'm selling these products, so in that case, if somebody tried to sue me for infringing their copyright, they would probably realize it's not worth paying the lawyers to do that, even if they might win. Although in this case it's under the MIT license, so I guess I'm legally licensed to do it. Anyways, it definitely still feels like MIT license is the big new license people are tending to use. Linus Torvalds, the maintainer of the Linux kernel, talked about the Linux license and whether he would have used a different license for the Linux kernel, and his response, probably being asked this question a lot of times before because there's a lot of argument around that, is he thought the license he used was the right license and he wouldn't have changed anything. So I mean, you gotta applaud consistency at the very least, and I don't particularly have a reason to disagree with him. That may very well have been the best license at the time and may still be the best license. The big thing about licenses in Linux, to boil it down to my simplistic understanding, is there are licenses where you force anybody who uses your code to make all of those changes that they make free and open source for everyone to use, versus there are licenses where somebody can use the open source code and then make their own proprietary code without having to release that code. So more businesses are likely to use software with that kind of license. And I think that's pretty much the main complaint, is that keeping something free, permanently free, and not letting others profit off of something. Android is a great example of Linux being free and then a significant amount of the Android code being proprietary closed source code. I wish we saw more games with this art style. Maybe not all visual novels, but there really are several art styles that are underrepresented. I'm pretty sure that the GNU license in particular was a major arguer of the idea of code having to be contributed back to. Google is also a great example of a company that doesn't really do a good job of contributing back its changes. Although personally, on my side, I may have made a change or two somewhere and sort of contributed back to that code. It's kind of hard to even be certain to know. And most coders either don't know anything about licenses because they don't really teach copyright and license in coding classes, or they don't pay much attention to them, because you can just get away with it. Unfortunately, we're going to increasingly see vibe coders replace actual coders, and vibe coders are inevitably going to be aware of the whole licensing issue and just not caring about copyright or understanding copyright in the first place. college. Yeah, there really probably should be in high school, if not junior high, a class that is just teaching about copyright and why copyright exists and why it has good aspects to it, and that it isn't just this bludgeon thing to protect rich corporations that own a ton of IP, even though for the most part in the United States it is a bludgeon thing to protect rich corporations that own a ton of IP. Music industry in particular, big one to point at. But yeah, part of the problem certainly there is that while you may technically own the copyright on something, if you're a small music creator, you have only as much as you can pay towards a lawyer is as much protection you really have. If somebody like Jay-Z, I don't know if he's even still making music, but if somebody like Jay-Z, just to pick a random musician, stole your music as a small music creator, there's very little you can do there. And even when rich musicians steal from other rich musicians, these copyright court cases go long and end up going nowhere. This looks like a weird game. And a trash game. One thing that the Thanksgiving weekend, or shopping weekend, I don't know what you really want to call it, doesn't seem to slow down is the amount of games that come out on Steam. This is an interesting art style, just neon, high contrast. I don't know if my eyes could really love that, but it's an interesting thought. Yeah. Which, speaking of Thanksgiving, I wanted to go on to a bit of a rant while we're here, in that cooking a turkey is always fraught with danger of at least having an overcooked turkey and just bad meat. Most people are not used to eating turkey in the first place, but I think I want to be a big proponent of dissecting the turkey while thawed, not cooked. Obviously, don't try and cut up a frozen turkey. You'll break any blades you have. But yeah, the best way it seems to me to cook a turkey is to get like an igloo cooler, which could be used for so many other things as far as holding drinks throughout the rest of the year. Brine the turkey in a brine of your choosing in that igloo cooler for, I think, probably several weeks, if not months, before Thanksgiving. Then pull it out of that igloo cooler, and it will have thawed and brined in that, which the high salt content in the proper brine will keep any bacteria from growing in the turkey, is the thought. Then put it on a chopping board and cut the legs off and start slicing the turkey breast and butcher the turkey as is. If it's a butterball, then I guess that's just like boneless, already processed. Then you would just slice it, which honestly, that's probably better if you're not good at butchering things, which most people are not. Interesting. Nothing more here is loading. I can't help but think that that's one of my scripts again, stopping that from happening. But yeah, I think you should slice it into slices, and from that point you would have much more consistent sizing in portions of the meat. You know, some people are going to want to eat the legs, but on a turkey you're only going to have 2 legs anyway, so it probably would make more sense to also just slice meat off the legs. Take one chunk off on one side, just running a knife down the bone, on the leg bone, and take another chunk off the other side. But generally how I've seen people do it is they keep the legs and they keep the wings, and then that would be fairly larger chunks of meat that will cook unevenly compared to the slices, which obviously you want the slices as equal as possible in the face of them, and then you would want to lay them flat on a pan and cook that pan for considerably less time at that point than you normally would. You'd have to learn to do this. And yeah, if you cook turkeys fairly often, you'd lock it down as far as your oven and the time your oven takes from that. And then as far as your presentation goes, you have a nice little plate. Maybe you put a bed of lettuce under it and you put the turkey on top of that. If everybody likes gravy, maybe you drizzle some gravy over it. Otherwise you have gravy on the side. You have side dishes for all of your side dishes, like potatoes and corn and green beans and carrots, whatever things you want there. You could certainly make a cornucopia design of the turkey itself on a sheet plate. But yeah, I think that is the best way to cook anything, is to have things consistent in size. That's really the only way. You're going to cook it a lot less. It's going to be less dried out. Maybe there's an experiment in having a pan with water under the pan that you're cooking the turkey in to keep it more moist. Some people have done that. But yeah, the idea of taking a whole turkey and throwing it in an oven and pulling it out and presenting it to people and then hand carving it at the station, hand carving it at the table, is just kind of a lot of pomp and circumstance, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. Stuffing should be cooked separately, in my opinion, and added later for people who want it. Keeping things separate, controlling the cooking, makes a lot more sense to me. So yeah, it is one of my plugins that is messing with this follow list. I don't actually have any games on this follow list though that I even want to do follow list cleanup on, so we'll just try and figure out what the plugin is. That's a problem. And that's the end of the show. Alright, that's going to be it for the show. I'm now going to go off and make my final decisions on Cyber Monday as far as what I'm going to end up buying, most of which is either barely on sale or not on sale at all. And then I probably will play some Bellatro and do a bunch of coding for the next couple days, as well as all the other things I'm working on. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and keep on watching. Thanks.